Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel, and in today's video I want to reflect on my journey to becoming the #1 Storm in Wizard101. Now for some context here, we are going to be talking about the Premier League in PvP. Obviously, that is because that is the league with the most things going on, more variables and whatnot. A lot of you probably already know who I am. I've been around for a couple of years now, but if you don't, hi, I'm Liam. I've been consistently the highest ranked Storm for probably about 2 to 3 years now, I would say. There's really only been like a season or two in that time frame where I haven't felt like grinding all the way up to the top because of burnout. Anyhow, the point of this video isn't simply just a boast. This is going to kind of act as a guide, if you will, to help you guys. I really think ever since I started doing the coaching over on my Fiverr for Wiz and whatnot, it's kind of opened up a whole different perspective to the game for me. And of course, if you are interested in signing up for that, it is in the description below. Anyways, without further ado, let's get right into the video, y'all. Alright, so I'm going to have this video split into 3 different sections. The first 2 things I want to talk about are going to be a little more straightforward and simple. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is going to be the matchups and how you're going to want to play in them. And obviously spells you're going to want to look out for and whatnot. Just basically generally around the meta. So the first thing I have for y'all is going to be something that I believe the entire Wiz community could work on, and that is going to be open to criticism, listen to different opinions from good players, even if you don't like them. There's a lot of times where bad players will not want to listen to good players, either because they think they know better, because they've been playing the game for, 12, 14 years, they think they know everything when they don't. Or it could just be, jealousy, envy, and whatnot. But I'm telling you right now, there are a lot of people I don't like in the PvP community, rightfully so. I'm a streamer in this PvP community, relatively toxic. You meet a lot of unpleasant people, I would say. But sometimes you can talk to people that you might not particularly be friends with, but they have a different take or opinion on the same issue in PvP. And even if you don't completely agree with what they have to say, it's about the perspective and just understanding more about the game. Not everybody knows this, of course, but I do take the time to run practice matches against other people who are very high up on the leaderboard. And the reason you do that is to run through scenarios and really pinpoint why something works and why something doesn't work. So ultimately, I would say if you can, try and brainstorm with as many people as possible. No offense to my recruit newbies out there, but some of y'all generally think you know what the hell you're talking about when you have a negative win rate. I just don't know any other game in the world on Wiz where you can have such an ego about losing every game. I just haven't seen anything like it. Again, I think that's just simply because they've been playing the game since they're very young, and it's half their life or whatever, right? They've been playing Wiz, so they feel insulted that they're not as good as somebody else, which is kind of weird, but I'm just saying how it is. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is going to be the fact that you're going to need to memorize basically all the spells in the game: top path, middle path, bottom path. You're also going to need to know the stat maxes and, some math and whatnot. This can be very helpful to, calculate whether or not you're dead. Me personally, I've never actually used a calculator for PvP. I think it's kind of cheesy. I'm not going to lie. I just play the game a lot and have a general understanding of how much hits are gonna do because I've seen it before, which leads some people to believe that, oh wow, Liam's really good at math. He can predict what the actual number of the hit is gonna do all the time just on the spot. When in reality, no, I'm actually not that good at math and whatnot. The Wiz devs always joke and, banter about that with me. It just doesn't matter because I have so much experience in the game, essentially. But yeah, I would argue this is actually a pretty important skill, simply because a lot of the times people will play scared and misplay and play the way they shouldn't because they think they're dead when they're really not. And I've seen this happen from every rank, right? All the way from recruit to even some of the best players in the game. Okay, for the next point of the video, I am going to help you guys with every matchup and how you're going to want to play in them. I'll also make a graph for what spells you should be using in what matchup and what spells they are going to be using in the matchups. So starting off with balance here, what I like to do is go for a weakness gambit. So usually a queen into a tri weakness. Double queen used to be good, but balance can just click scarab and counter a double queen for 1 pip, which is kind of dumb, I know. But basically, once you do that, you're going to want to get rid of your trap auras very early on, and steal pip is great in general as well. So is catch of the day in this matchup. Bounce wizards are always going to brace a lot, so instead of trap auring and dying to chameleon, what you're going to want to do is start bubble and hit and bubble a lot while that brace is out, so you can run the brace out and also trade it semi-evenly. Most balances don't really pack weakness counters right now. You don't really need them generally, but even if they purge, it's not that big of a deal. Once you have pressure and the gambit set up, all you really need to do is get the pips to threaten the Oni, and they are going to shield every turn because everyone does that. It's just kind of the nature. You could also go for a trap aura if they brace, because if they chameleon you, it doesn't matter. You have a better hit with the Oni. But it's very important to only trap aura when you have more pressure than the chameleon itself. And if you do end up deck filling your shield breakers or whatever, catch of the day is never a bad move. Then you just empower or dark surge to get your pips back up, or like aura ping pong, get back to 9 pips. Generally, what bounce wizards are going to do as their like weakness counter is going to be bounce King Artorias. It's a really good hit, and it's basically like a permanent weakness on you. You can't counter these because there's too many of them on you. So it is a little annoying to go against, and it does do a decent chunk of damage, but generally, if you have like, you know, bubble, galvanic to catch blades, maybe a trap aura, right, considering they brace a lot, you can hit through and still do most of their HP. But yeah, this entire matchup is essentially just about creating more pressure than the balance can actually deal with or handle. I prefer going for the Oni setup. I just have a very good win rate with it in general. You don't really want to try and trade hits with a balance, simply because they get better stats and they get better cards than you. So generally when a school has that over you, you don't want to try and actually trade spells with them because you will lose. Next up, we have the death matchup. Same thing kind of with this one. You're going to want to go for spirit weaknesses, and later on try and go for like a queen into a wand hit. I like to queen into a wand hit after they go for like a headless or a vampire or a wraith, because that way you have a plan for the next 2 weaknesses they put on you and whatnot. Then you'll actually be pressuring the Oni out of that if you time your pips properly, of course. Spirit weaknesses and the Queen Calypso buff definitely helped this matchup in recent patches, I would say, but it's still a really bad matchup simply because the death just has such an easy time doing damage to you compared to the damage you do to them. But yeah, similar to the bounce matchup here, you're just simply going to want to get the gambit set up and pressure a lot with like a lot of bubbles, maybe trap aura when they brace, try and avoid galvanic because monster mash is pretty OP at the moment. And aside from that, you know, just keep the shields off, you know, have a snowman, have a purge up when they go for a hit and debuff, like a vampire. I wouldn't recommend going for snowman early on in the game, simply because they can just click Pyre Dragon, and Pyre Dragon just does like all your HP. So early on in the game, if you want a weakness counter, I suggest either going for the Queen Wand combo or purging, and only doing the snowman when you know they can't Pyre Dragon, because they'll take too big of a hit from like your Oni or your Owl later on in the game. Alright, the next 2 matchups we are going to talk about is going to be Fire and the Storm matchups. Now, these matchups play very, very similarly because they're very quick matchups, very simple. Generally, what you want to do is always steal pip or empower round 1, and then immediately follow up with like a catch of the day. Typically in a storm mirror, it really comes down to whoever catch of the day is first, and the reason for that simply is because catch without a buff open does about like 2.3 to a storm, which puts them down to about what, 7.7, and a 45 bladed owl at tier 5 does about, well, 7.8 8k roughly to a storm. So in a mirror, optimally you just don't want to steal pip, take an open catch first, and then, you know, debuff every turn until you can get the 10 pips to owl. And if the opponent impairs, you're simply just going to catch of the day again. And typically if they do impair and you got another open catch, they're usually low enough to the point where you don't really need to play for the owl. You could just spam Catalans into like a 4 pip or something. Aside from that, the mirror matchup is just completely RNG. It used to take a lot more skill, but it's kind of very formulaic and Google Docsy now. As for the fire matchup, again, your best move is always to steal pip or empower round 1 and immediately go for a catch of the day. Just a good open hit again, and you kind of can pressure more with 245 blades than anything the fire can do. If a good fire is trap stacking efficiently, they can still give you a run for their money, but if you just pack Immolate, which you should be on a storm, great card right now in the meta, they just won't stand a chance. Just click Immolate at a good time, preferably after you have one of the catch of the day blades on, and you should just win the game on the spot off of that alone. Also right now we are in a very heavily dot meta, so I would recommend pulling for your Stormzilla at least within the first like 3 to 4 rounds in the game and holding on to that. A lot of fires, including myself actually, just play he don't got it in that matchup because it's one of the worst matchups in the entire game right now. So the fire will just send a random OT and pray the storm deck fills and take a win that way because it's kind of impossible to win that matchup otherwise. So yeah, essentially just maybe Aura War to build pips, just catch the day, like the storm mirror in a sense, play for the owl. If they trap stack you with like fuels and whatnot, just immolate at a good time. Again, it's about how you time the immolate. It's not just simply just clicking the counter. You're not on a good school where you can just simply click the counter and auto win, like Balance for example. And then other than that, I mean, yeah, you just kind of click catch of the day and hold on to the Stormzilla if they dot, and they just won't have a chance to beat you. Okay, so for the ice matchup, what you can do in this matchup is shield a lot since ice is weak to shields. It is one of the few things you can do. Other than that, I mean, you could spam a whole lot of steel pips, and your goal in this matchup is to try and be sure they don't get a whole lot of effects out, like a lot of shields, you know, maintain bubble control, stuff like that. You're just going to keep it really simple and try to counter their shield when they do it, try to counter their bubble when they do it and whatnot. In general, going for a trap aura is not a terrible idea because you could just immolate their shoe. Now, obviously, the shoe is going to do a lot more damage than your immolates, but if you time it right, it's not that bad. Also, if you happen to somehow manage to have blades out, like in the gameplay here, I Stormzilla, their Fire Elf, you want to burn those blades as soon as possible because they could use them against you with Wyvern or like Deadly Depths. But yeah, just burning the blades on like a Catalan or even hit in bubbles to make the counter give less value is generally a good idea because you're still hitting with a buff and getting damage out that they can't trade with. Now they are going to bubble because the blimp pet is obviously broken and they know that. So when they do bubble, you're going to want to fight your heart out for that. That's why I pack like 5 hit and bubbles or 6 hit and bubbles is just for this matchup, because if you can lock their shields down and take off the weaknesses and keep the bubble, the matchup is semi-playable, but if you lose control of any of that, it is like one of the worst matchups in the game. Okay, but if you stay on top of the weaknesses, shields, and bubble, you should be relatively fine. The whole idea here is you don't want to go toe-to-toe with an ice, simply because they have better spells with like Volcanic Golem, Winter Moon. Lord of Winter is still even good with like just like 2 random shields or random spirit shield. So yeah, essentially your game plan here is to try and stay neutral with the ice and try and counter everything they do. And you're kind of want to play like a Jade with like Dark and Stormy and Berry. And eventually when you do chip them down to around like 7k or 8k, you're gonna want to go into strike and try to finish off the game with like a storm owl. But up until they're around that like 5k HP range, you just really want to be chipping them down until you can just strike and play for the owl. Next up, we have the myth matchup. This matchup honestly gives me quite a bit of anxiety. In my opinion, it really just comes down to whoever gets like better crit and deck RNG. It's pretty straightforward though, right? The myth is just gonna buff every turn until the storm messes up, and then the myth can punish them. But aside from that, the myth will just, you know, buff up until they can one-shot with a Jhin. So what you're going to want to do early on here in this matchup is be sure you get an Ice Pip and 2 Fire Pips. This will allow you to impair and also immolate at any time. The point of this is to try and get your deck together and create a lot of pressure that the myth can't keep up with. So what I like to do is just Orb Ping Pong until I get like an Ice Pip, 2 Fire Pips, and a Storm Pip. Then I'll send my Catch of the Day when I win the Aura War with positive or negative auras. Then once you take the buffed Catch of the Day, pretty much half of the game is already over. If they impair your Catch of the Day, you just Catch of the Day again and you're fine. And if they don't impair, they're going to have to start shielding at some point. So usually after I Catch of the Day with the buff, I just go for weakness. I like to weakness instead of set shield, simply because Glimpse is really OP and it just absolutely fries everyone, right? So I stopped carrying myth sets for that reason, just for this matchup. A weakness gets the job done for me personally. I think I've only lost to 1 myth, and that's when I literally didn't pull a single Catch of the Day. 60 cards in, so I mean, like, that was crazy. But yeah, you're pretty much just gonna play around Catch of the Day and, you know, impairing their blades or going for an immolate at a good time. Something I like to do is once they start to shield a lot to set up their Jhin eventually, once you have the Catch of the Day pressure, if they trap you at least with like a myth trap, which is pretty common, you can actually immolate to remove the myth trap, like a whole buff. And then you can also like counter their shield gambit in a sense and keep them from shielding again while still threatening the owl, assuming you have your pips well and you're, you know, like strike maybe. Lastly, we have the life matchup. Now, the life matchup can be a little tough if they are set for storm and like running death identity stuff. So it's not as easy as some people make it out to be. But that being said, if you play well, time your pips good with, you know, berry, countering threefolds, you know, catch the dang, play around the counters, it's really not that bad, you know. But a good life with like death dual school who's set for storm, it can really be tough to beat. So what I recommend doing is kind of a variation of everything. So like spear weakness, queen to set up the oni, but then also like berry and healing so you don't fall behind. Essentially just mix it up. Like, don't play very linear and predictable. Just throw like a catch and then a queen and then a spear weakness, then a heal and a catch, then a queen, you know. Just keep cycling out your 3 identities and it should just be enough to overwhelm the life. Also, a pro tip, if you do the new raid and you get the new hat, you actually get a free item card essentially that is a very good card that will slay Jades and healing on the hat. So definitely get that if you are able to do the new raid. Aside from that, I just pack like 2 Tritons inside for emergency. Usually 1 or 2 gets the job done. Then obviously we have like Queen Calypsos in our main deck, a lot of them for the Gambit, and also it's helpful against Jades. So I mean, if you can't beat a Life Wizard with all this stuff and, you know, like 6 or 5 queens, 2 Tritons, and a Storm King art, I kind of feel like it's a skill issue at that point. Anyways, y'all, that is everything for the video. I apologize for not being as active lately. I wanted to make this video and have it be, you know, higher quality than usual on the channel. I do want to get better at editing, honestly, and just make things more flashy, but honestly, I don't really know how to, you know, but maybe I also need to like watch some like tutorials or something on YouTube, but figure it out. But yeah, if you made it this far and you haven't dropped a like or a sub, it would mean the world if y'all could do that. I hope this video performs really well. Because I'll be honest, man, being a YouTuber, working on like a project or a video for a long time and then like seeing it flop or whatever, it's kind of disheartening, you know. But Anyways, I appreciate y'all for watching the video. I hope you learned something new. And if you have any questions, just, feel free to join the Discord or ask them in the comments below. I try to get back to y'all to the best of my ability. And if you want more like one-on-one personal direct help, there's always my coaching link as well. All right, y'all, I will see you on the next one. Thank you for being here. Take care and goodbye.